It's a very simple lecture this evening. It's called Glyphosate Suppression of the Cytochrome P450 Enzymes, the Amino Acid Biosynthesis in the Gut Microbiome. This is the pathway to modern disease, right? Everybody good with that? What in the world did he just say? This is a 48-page report that is incredibly well documented from MIT and another professor out of the Institute of Science in New Hampshire that explains of the extreme dangers that the glyphosate, which is it's the enzyme, it's the component, it's the extremely bad component that is in the Roundup Ready, the Monsanto Roundup Ready, or the Roundup products, and that they have claimed over the last 10 to 15 years has not in any way adversely affected our health. However, the evidence does seem to show a different way. So this group at MIT, this report came out on April 10th. This is really fresh off the presses. April 10th, 2013. Corn, every corn product, 93%. Soy products, 98%. All sugar products and corn sweeteners, all of those, GMO, all of them across the board, extremely high in this particular phosphates. So how these work in the body is absolutely a terror. It's what it's doing in the United States, and what's done to our health is, not that I'm saying this is one of the most important things, it's probably of the most important things in some ways that we can deal with this whole day. And that's not to take away from all these other really bright doctors who know all these other really important things. But you name the illness they're talking about, name it, cancer, MS, diabetes, obesity, autism. I can take it right back to this particular enzyme and how these enzyme suppressions affect every one of those illnesses. Argentina studied GMOs for 10 years, and Argentina, after 10 years of study, said, no more, absolutely no more. In Germany, they're under lock and key. You can't get the Monsanto Roundup Ready product without a strict supervision by a particular farm circuit and things like that. They're absolutely not used. Argentina, 10 years they observed them, all because one doctor said, I think these might be bad. In the year 1992, a very, very bright vice president by the name of Dan Quayle, known for his high level of intelligence. That was the guy who couldn't, what couldn't he spell? He couldn't, potato, exactly. He's not an Iowa guy, is he? Oh, hell no. Anyway, he decided to help speed these genetically modified foods along, that there should be no regulations or no blockages, and that they shouldn't have to meet any kind of government standards so that they'll be able to get into the public faster. Oh, this is absolutely true. I can show you the documentation. He said, no, these have got to be made available because these are good for everybody. So in 1992, they signed, then Senior President Bush and Quayle, a bill that said that GMO, genetically modified organism foods, did not have to go under any of the normal FDA or USDA regulations. Well, it made it pretty good. So that's when that all started off. By the way, March 2013, did you hear what Obama signed in? Yeah. He signed a bill that Monsanto or all other bioengineering foods that are bioengineered are not, you cannot bring lawsuits against them. No, true, got in 2013. So President Obama actually allowed for this Monsanto exception to get through in a gun control bill. You know what's the strange thing about this bill? It was anonymous. The person who came up with it and started it did not sign his name to it. Can't sue him. No, you could go through and I can prove all this stuff, or these guys from MIT and New Hampshire can prove all these things are happening. But even if you can prove that it's because no liability, no more. So Eli Lilly did it earlier on the vaccinations. We watched that happen. So Argentina, one doctor there said, wait a minute, this is actually pretty scary stuff. This goes back over 10 years ago. This goes back to early 2000, 2001, 2002. So they said, we're going to do a 10-year study of what happens to our health in Argentina under these genetically modified foods. How well are these working for us? And in 10 years, they published the information. Google search GMOs Argentina study. They had a 4-time increase, 4 times more. You are 4 times more likely in just 10 years to die as a child before the age of 2. Yeah, oh yeah. You had a 5 times higher rate of having birth defects as a child born in that 10-year period of time. You had a 3 times higher rate of cancer born in that time, in those 10 years. And it goes on and on and on. There's a number of other things that goes on and on. Those just, infertility, women's infertility, which is absolutely epidemic in the U.S. right now. Fertility clinics abound. In New York or in our area, in Connecticut, almost everybody thinks in terms of fertility clinic. There's none of that old, good old-fashioned way of making a baby anymore. But the reason is because infertility in women over the years and years of eating these types of food has risen so high that the only way that they're able to get them successfully pregnant is through IV, in vitro. And that's absolutely ridiculous. I talked about in the other lecture how it's happened in animals. There's a 5-time higher rate of infertility in animals. There's spontaneous abortion in animals that eat the GMO foods. There's broad-based death within the chickens. There is lack of meat. There is a 60% reduction in sperm in the bulls. So all of these things came over in the GMOs. Now, why is it this happens? Okay, I said this thing early on. Okay, suppression of the cytochrome P450 enzyme and amino acid biosynthesis. What do you think that means in English? Okay, let's take it apart. What's an enzyme? Anybody know what an enzyme is? Absolutely, it's extremely, extremely important in your body. Whatever you eat, whatever it is, whether it be a fat, a carbohydrate, or a protein, it requires an enzyme to break it down. So enzymes, protease enzymes break down proteins, lipase enzymes break down fat, and glucose enzymes break down sugar. All right, so that's a simple. So enzymes, you can put the word in there, catalysts. So they're very, very, very important in your body, correct? Okay, so this particular enzyme is a cytochrome P450. Okay, that cytochrome P450 is the enzyme circuits, and it's a number of them. There's a series of enzymes that help break it down over 75% of your metabolic functions. So if you look up this particular enzyme, and you look up at virtually anything you eat, or within 75% of anything you're doing, there is one of these enzymes that matches whatever it is you're doing, including a really, really important thing, which is oxidation. Okay, so oxidation is how the cells, remember, okay, we have a very, very strong, healthy cell. Inside that cell is these things called mitochondria, and those mitochondria convert energy, ATP, and they have to have oxygen to do that, right? Oxygen is needed inside your cells, right? Everybody breathe. Come on, breathe in, breathe in, breathe in. There's oxygen. But you didn't make that oxygen exchange inside your body if you didn't have one of these P450 enzymes. You understand that? That's how important it is. So it's 75% of your metabolic functions, and it's extremely important in the oxidation process in the mitochondria. You know, the fastest growing form of diseases for children today is mitochondrial-based diseases. In fact, there's a whole new science just in mitochondrial-based diseases. I mean, the ones that we know for quite a long would be, any of the muscular dystrophy-based diseases. Right? Everybody knows muscular dystrophy Duchenne. That's when the mitochondria doesn't produce electricity properly, doesn't produce any ATP. So now those have gone from just a few small diseases that are mitochondrial diseases to literally hundreds and hundreds of childhood diseases that are all based on dysfunction of the mitochondria. It's unbelievable. You know why that is? You know why? Because these sweet moms have these beautiful babies. Maybe they don't have the ability or the time to nurse. So what do they put in these little babies' mouths that are 2 and 3 and 4 weeks old? Formula. You know what the formula is made of? Guess what? Soy. So soy now is 98% GMO, and corn is 93% GMO. And those are two of the major food sources, especially for children. So they're feeding these beautiful little babies, all these wonderful babies. They're trying to do the best they can. They're feeding them their little system. The first thing that their system get is some form of GMO. And you talk about toxic, you talk about things that suppress across the board. So of course their oxidation issues are off. What's typically either the first or second thing in the list that's in a child's formula? Number 1 would be soy. Number 2 would be what? No, not baby food. It's in the formula. Corn, yes, sugar or corn syrup. So you choose sugar or corn syrup. Corn syrup, again, 90-some% of all corn syrup is GMO, right? And sugar beets, 90-something% of all sugar beets, sugar cane, GMO. So what is those are the chances of these poor babies. literally the first 6 months of their life, they're getting about a 90% GMO-based food in their system. In the year let's just say 1999, the rate of autism was 1 in 200. Now, the year 2013, 1 in every 25 children is somewhere on the autism spectrum. No, seriously, it's unbelievable. Unbelievable. So yeah, we can say that there's this, I'm not big on vaccination, I'm not big on all these other things that can happen, but I can tell you, the worst thing you can do is give these little children this GMO. They're loaded with GMOs. Before they've reached the age of 6 months, 90% of their diet is a GMO. What are we doing to this generation? So again, back to that suppression. So that suppression, that enzyme is really, really, really important, that catalyst, okay? So when you suppress that catalyst, when you suppress that enzyme, a number of really bad things happen. Really, really, really bad things happen in your body. It's like you without any kind of positive charge. Okay, one of the things that's most important in the production of enzymes, not just the P450, but all enzymes, is a very, very important nutrient in the body. It's magnesium. I can tell you, of the people that I test, that I work with clinically, well over 90% of the people are magnesium deficient. So GMOs suppress the magnesium, and they suppress magnesium in the plant. They basically shut off the plant so it can't uptake magnesium. Okay? By the way, GMO food looks, smells, and somewhat tastes like regular food. But it's a big fake. It's a forfeit. It's a counterfeit. You think you're eating corn, or you're eating soybean, or you're eating something that, you've read the label and it says corn or whatever. But the truth is, it is void of nutrition. There's manganese, sulfur, really important, copper, magnesium, all of these important trace minerals are virtually not there. Here's the interesting thing. This is the other way that Monsanto sort of stacks the deck. They make a deal that if you're a farmer and you buy their seed, I'm going to buy corn seed, here we have a nice little deal. First of all, you can't tell anybody, you can't talk about anything like this, and you cannot test your food for nutritional value. No, it's true. Absolutely true. They sign a deal, they cannot compare. So the farmer can't grow one field of healthy, natural, organic food, one field of a Monsanto seed, and say, well, let me run the assays on this corn. Oh, wow, look at the magnesium corn, and this is 200 milligrams. Let's look at the corn from Monsanto. Oh, there is none. It's 5 milligrams, less than 5. You can't do that test. If you do that test, that's considered patent infringement in Monsanto world, and they will bring a lawsuit against the farmer, right? Will they bring lawsuits against farmers?
Many times.
Many times. Read or watch the movie Food Inc. There's a new movie coming out called At Any Price. Dennis Quaid stars in it. He's a seed salesman who gets caught selling not Monsanto or not GMO seeds. And it shows exactly what happens when you do this. So that's what I'm talking about, being stacked the deck. You're thinking, well, why would the farmers grow something that they know is not working? Because they can't compare it, they can't get around it, they can't buy other seeds unless we do something to make a major, major change in this. So again, back to this. So the suppression of that enzymes, those really, really powerhouse enzymes, that's P450 enzymes, if you suppress those, a number of really bad things happen in your body that has been happening. This is that Argentina study, and this is something we can observe in our country happening right now. And I can break them down, but in simple terms, what happens first and foremost, there's not a thing called a sulfur transfer. And that sulfur transfer sounds like a really, really basic thing. But we are both carbon, hydrogen, and sulfur-based animals. And without that sulfur transfer, you will never, never uptake any of the other nutrients, and you'll find you have a thing that's called gut dysbiosis. In other words, you cannot break foods down in your GI tract. Instead of the body's ability to uptake nutrients, because you don't have that important sulfur transfer, you don't do that. So children are more likely to be, there's a number of different things that can happen when you don't have this in your GI tract. Children are much more likely to have autism. They're much more likely to have a number of immunosuppressed responses. They don't have, you build your immune responses in your gut, right? You do know this, right? Catecholamines. This is where you build your immune system. Everybody's building your immune system right here, right now. That's why it's important. The acidophilus, colostrum, all these things that you can build it with. But if you don't have that very important little trick thing called the sulfur transfer, you still don't build it, even if you think you're eating those foods. Do you see the dangers of GMO? Do you see what happens when you suppress this little group of enzymes? Okay, so we have an oxygen issue, we have a gut dysbiosis issue, and it goes on and on. You know what Roundup is? Its classification, it's called a biocide. You know, bio is, that's life, by the way. That's the word for life. So it's not a pesticide, it's not an herbicide, it's a biocide. What it does is kills the soil. So the plants look beautiful, the plants have a really nice appearance, and you can still get your bushels of corn, but they have nothing inside, and they're counterfeit food. And that is an extremely big problem. So these, when you turn off manganese, zinc, sulfur, this is exactly what's happened in the system. So back to these enzymes. So these enzymes or catalysts are extremely important. Like I said, it's 75% of all functions of your body. 75%, including oxidation. Right? That's like huge. You do understand that no matter what you've done today, you've used some of these particular enzymes. If they're not working, you're not working. And if your cells are full of these glyphosates, this group of enzymes is not working inside of you. So what problems is it called? One of the most common problems that we see, first and foremost, based on the suppression of these particular enzymes, is obesity. Well, that's not a problem in the US, is it? Right? Obesity. It's like epidemic. It's unbelievable. You know why that is? All right, first of all, you suppress these enzymes. You suppress an interesting satiation mechanism. In other words, the thing that says, I've had enough, doesn't work like it's supposed to. How, you know, you used to, people would eat food, they say, okay, I've eaten for 20 minutes, that's enough food, I'm good, I'll go on and do the next things or whatever. You suppress those enzymes, you suppress that satiation mechanism. You also, when you eat GMO foods, because you are aware, your incredible innate intelligence, and every one of you, you know you're not actually getting enough food. Because there's no nutrients in the food. So you eat more food to try to get more nutrients out of the food. But there's not, even if you eat bushels of corn, if you eat a tub of popcorn, which they can do at movies, or if you eat, drink a whole huge thing of corn sweetened drink, you still don't feel like you get enough because your body inside is still not properly fed. And so you say more, 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 more. I want more, 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 more. These enzymes are extremely important to you to break down the foods that are high quality foods, but they also turn off that thing that says, I don't want more anymore. I'm basic, I'm full, I'm happy, that's enough. Now, do you think that's a problem in the US today? Right? Well, richest country, we got all the food we could possibly buy or eat. There's tons of food. You go to any supermarket, it's full of food or fake food, right? But look at our society. Look at how many people. I mean, you can't walk down the street without seeing people that are extremely obese. I mean, so sadly true. It's an unbelievable epidemic. But does any of the diet doctors or any of the people who are talking on TV, or did anybody say, by the way, if you stop eating GMO food, you'll lose weight? Has anybody ever heard that? Here's documentation. Eat non-GMO foods and you'll lose weight. You know why? Because it's real food and your body knows about it. You know, I had the wonderful opportunity growing up on a reservation. I had one of the best childhoods you could possibly imagine. I really did. It was phenomenal. I grew up in the middle of the forest, way, way up in northern Michigan, where northern Michigan and Canada come together. And we had one forest that was 20 miles long. And I'm telling you, it was the best time in the world. But we didn't have the kind of food that people have today. But we were happy. We hunted for food. We fished for food. We even jigged frogs or ate turtles. We ate all that stuff. We had wild rice that we harvested with our canoes. We'd fill our canoes full of wild rice, which is an actual indigenous grain to this area. Pumpkins we grew. Corn we grew. We grew all these things ourselves in our own small little gardens, gathered food and basically kept food. But even though, you know, I wouldn't say we had the richest of things, and I grew up in a very, very humble house with very, very humble clothes and stuff like that, it was a very powerful way to grow up. I left the reservation when I graduated from high school in 1975. I decided I was going to go and really learn about medicine and things like that, and I left that area and started my college training in different areas. About 10 years later, I came back to the reservation. And I could not believe the changes in 10 years. Because literally when I was leaving, and as I left, they decided that as poor Native people, these poor Indians, we've taken all this stuff from them, so we're going to give them some of our really great food. And so every week, a huge truck, a U.S. government surplus truck, would come to the reservation. And they dropped off blocks of cheese. When I say cheese, I'm talking this big. There were blocks of cheese this big. There was huge, huge bags of white flour, just what we needed. Next to that was huge, huge bags of white sugar. Oh yeah, absolutely. Here you go. We feel really bad how we treated, and there was a bunch of other things. I don't remember. I just remember unloading and doing some of those. Here you go. Now you can eat, be healthy. Within the 10 years that I had went away to college and would go back only occasionally, by the time I went back, it was actually the passing of my grandfather, 10 years after I started school, I could not believe the changes on reservation. I could not believe the increase, first of all, of obesity, diabetes, and alcohol addiction. Just in the 10 years between when I left and when my grandfather passed away and I came back just to see. And I can tell you the one major difference was the food that they gave us to eat. Thank you so very much. We have a law of 7 generations. We think in terms of how everything that we do on this earth, every step we take on this earth, we're thankful to the 7 generations that came before us. My mother, my grandfather, and all the generations that go back on both sides of my family. And we think about every step that we take on earth, how am I going to leave the world for my next 7 generations? My son, my grandson, and so on. And because of this, we live in respect. It took 3 generations, 120 years, for Monsanto to basically destroy this soil. 3 years. And it's absolutely time that we, as a team, as a tribe, stop this. We must stand up and make changes, or we're not leaving anything to our children. Monsanto's stated purpose, they said clearly, is that every seed in the world should be a genetically designed and chemically enhanced seed. That's their purpose. That's what they said. We want every seed on earth to be a GMO seed. The president of the company stands up. Monsanto has a research facility in the St. Louis area that has hundreds of PhDs. In fact, they were just given $400 million to expand this facility in April of 2013. And by the way, they have a hell of a history of poisoning us. Look up the history of Monsanto from 1901 to now. It'll blow you away. I'm not going to go into that. But what they've done with this particular glyphosate, this Roundup Ready, this Roundup product, it's completely, it is across the board. It's in the food, it's in the animals, it's now showing up in water supplies, and what it does to suppress our function is absolutely, it's terrorism. It's soil terrorism, it's terrorism on us as human beings. And the way they stack the cards politically to supposedly shut us down must be changed. We must come together as a tribe. We must come together as a team. If we don't do anything else, we must change this. The P450 enzyme is extremely important in the uptake of 2 very specific neurotransmitters. Now, the precursors of these neurotransmitters are going to be amino acids, tryptophan, tyrosine, and all of these neurotransmitters require zinc. Most of them require manganese, which remember we said earlier in this lecture, those are already blocked. So when you block those and you suppress these enzymes, you end up with a society, or you end up with a group of people who are dopamine and serotonin deficient. Now, we have nurses and we have other people in this room who are very advanced thinkers. Do you know what dopamine and serotonin does? Go ahead. Calms you down. When you want to go to sleep tonight, you're going to lay down and your body's going to say, oh, I better produce some serotonin so I can fall off to sleep. When you wake up in the morning, you want to have some passion and you want to have some drive and some get up and go and say, today's a great day, the sun is out and I got a world to change. You can't do that if you don't have dopamine. Dopamine is what gets you going and keeps you running through the whole day. So serotonin is an inhibitor, dopamine's an exciter, but we need both of those. We need exciters and inhibitors to make us have a high quality of well-being and mental focus and clarity. Guess what happens on the glyphosate? Guess what 2 neurotransmitters are most adversely affected? Dopamine and serotonin. Again, the studies here, well documented. I'm not making this up. Do we have an epidemic of depression in our country? Do we? We literally have an epidemic of depression. So you go see your psychiatrist. Does your psychiatrist say, by the way, are you eating GMO foods? Because if you are, that could cause depression. Has any psychiatrist ever said, are you eating GMO foods? Because that could affect your serotonin. No. They say, by the way, here's a Prozac. Prozac's a SRI, a serotonin reuptake inhibitor. Doesn't actually help your serotonin, it just makes sure the little bit of serotonin you make, you actually process better. Sounds great, right? Do we have a society of apathetic people who basically don't care? Seriously, don't care. I'll get there. I don't care. That's dopamine deficiency. Across the board, dopamine deficiency. We become really, really big now in testosterone. The low T, the big T, et cetera, get your testosterone. Look, I'm down with that. Even if you have testosterone functioning in your body. By the way, if you eat GMO, men, I can tell you for sure your testosterone is dropping. I can tell you, and I can tell you exactly why that is because of the suppression of this enzyme. But previous to testosterone, there's dopamine. Remember that I told you about the cattle? 60% less sperm in the bulls with the long-term use of feed that's GMO? 60% reduction of sperm. That's not from me. That's one of the cattlemen studies. Same thing in men. We become apathetic. We become wuss. We become wimps because we're taking the wrong food in. What can you do to change it around? First of all, the most important step that everybody should take is identify where your food source is. What are you eating and where is it coming from? Where is it grown? How is it prepared? Everything like that. You need to start taking full responsibility and be proactive for what you put in your mouth. At the very least, very least, you can do that. And by the way, one of the best ways to change the model, the food model, is for enough of us to say we will not eat GMO foods. Because if that happens, the dollars and cents will have to shift. And by the way, there's a really great company out of Montana called Blue Marble that's designing really, really positive bioavailable types of fertilizers. And there are other things out there, seeds and things like that are going to come on the market if enough of us push for it that can be done. It's a great company out of Montana called Blue Marble that's doing this. Blue Marble. Look up Blue Marble. You'll be very big on the sport. So number one is stop eating this stuff, especially that you know is damaging. And the three biggies are corn or corn syrup, soy products, absolutely boycott, have nothing to do with soy products, and the sugars, especially the sugar coming from corn sweeteners or sugar beets. Avoid, avoid, avoid. The other thing that every person can do, because if I was a betting person, I would bet in every one of your cells, inside your cells, because these toxins go intercellular and affect the ATP, the mitochondria of your cell. I would almost bet that every one of you have a toxic load of these chemicals, these glyphosate and other pesticide-based chemicals inside your cell. So there's two things I would recommend across the board to everybody. This is a product that's photonically charged. What does photonically charged mean? Okay, photonic charge means, for instance, a plant, a tree or corn or spinach, they absorb the sun. And when they take in the sun, they take in a photonic energy charge. You need that photonic charge in your cells to reactivate these particular enzymes. The photonic charge turns these enzymes that are turned off and turns them back on, re-switches them. So it's extremely, extremely, extremely important to turn those back on. So photonic charges are in plants. So let's say that you grow a big field of spinach and you cut most of it, or cabbage, but you don't cut it all. This is how we used to farm. At the end of the year, the stuff you didn't finish or that got a little bit coarse or was older, you left it in the field, it rotted, and then you plowed it into the field, right? That's how soil's been treated for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. We were small-time farmers, but the big-time farmers did that as well. And so that's why we used to have topsoil that was 6 feet to 10 feet. Now we have topsoil less than 1 foot in so many places. Because even if the plants die, the corn stalks that are GMO, there's no photonic energy in them. They're dead. They're dead. A lady came in and told me today that she used to bake a sweet potato. It used to take her 40 to 45 minutes to bake a sweet potato the way she'd like to make it. She says now the same sweet potato takes 10 minutes. You know why that is? There's nothing in it. It's changed. So when you plow those crops down, they don't put photonic or carbon or humus back in the soil. They're dead. They're dead. They're fake. They're artificial. So this comes from a deposit of photonically charged plants that has been held in the earth for a very, very long period of time. It's called humic acid or fulvic acid. And when you take this, you take 2 tablespoons of this at night, it will recharge, reset your photonic energy, get your cells back. This is sunshine in a bottle, okay? But it also it flushes those toxins that you've accumulated in your cells, it flushes them out. So then your extracellular liquids, you do this and you drink plenty of water, then the extracellular liquids, your lymphatics, your bladder and stuff, you'll urinate all kind of toxins out. And in my years of practice using this, I've had people come back and tell me stories of their urine smells like chemicals or metals or I mean, it's just unbelievable what this does to flush out. So this is the number one thing I would do, and this is the trace minerals, because you haven't had trace minerals in your body for so long, you don't even know what it's like to not have, you don't know what it's like to have trace minerals in your body, right? Ken, you've done these before. Some of you people have taken these. John takes these. I take these. It makes such a difference in how you feel on a daily basis. I would never, ever, I won't attempt a day without trace minerals, for sure. 3 times a day, I take 20 drops. And I've taken this many, many, many times. Continue to take it at bedtime, 2 tablespoons, because I want to flush anything that doesn't belong in my cells out, and I want to get photonic energy back in my cells.